Business schools need to come closer to the roots of the economy, says Professor Cyril Lewicki of Queen Mary College, himself a former successful small businessman.
You're asking what the business school can learn from a market like this. A great deal of things. But people in this market are living on their survival instincts, on their smell for the marketplace, on their knowledge of what people in this environment want. It seems to me that people from business schools have got to come down here to learn those very basic facts.
It's difficult to think of how we could be more applied. The idea that this academic institution isn't applied, I assure you, as faculty dean, that's not my problem with the faculty. You know, they're out there so much of their time, so it is a very applied institution.
Too many not experience. They've not worked in a working class environment. A lot of them haven't actually done anything in industry itself. It's become another academic faculty type job.
I think probably one of the very good things about the British business schools is that they have been very much more applied than many of the American schools. Some of the experiences I've had in the United States, I've sat at seminars thinking, you know, what would we ever do with any of this? Whereas that very rarely happens here.
The London Business School says it does provide some direct contact with industry, for instance during the 9-month-long Sloan programme for senior executives. These Sloan Fellows are on a transatlantic trip to the Grumman Aerospace factory on Long Island. But the real emphasis of the programme is less on the shop floor and more on the boardroom.
It's very difficult to, I think, get the exact balance of field experience and case studies. But I think that it's very difficult for the academic staff to design the courses, strike perhaps the exact balance between how much depth you need to go into on theoretical principles and how much you can relate to a broad brush understanding of the practical problems. I mean, I think they get it right most of the time, but if they do err, it perhaps is on the side of being perhaps rather on the academic side.
The LBS and the other schools seek to create an elite, according to Cyril Lewicki. Lewicki has caused some controversy with his call for a new-style business school to be based on this derelict dockland in East London.
I'm hoping that we'll be running very important programs which will be about raising their entrepreneurial skills, about finding escape routes from some of the poverty that the urban decay, inner city urban decay, has represented. I personally came from this decay. My way out was through the markets, it was through retail shops and eventually wholesale businesses, so that I found my own personal money route out of this kind of background. I hope that we'll be running set-up schemes, start-off schemes, business schemes, which show these people the way out.
Lewicki's critics, more numerous than his supporters, suggest he may find it difficult to translate his dream of entrepreneurial education into a practical reality. On one issue, however, Lewicki's radical vision coincides with that of Professors Handy and Constable, authors of this week's critical reports. Management education must cease to be the preserve of a small elite. There are 2.25 million junior and middle managers, says Constable, for whom no appropriate training programme now exists.
Shorter and shorter, and people go round saying never has the pace of change been.
But the first target of business education needs to be the bosses who see training as something which is a cost rather than a benefit.
Well, some other nations, like the Germans and the Americans in particular, believe that you should be trained effectively, either in college education as in the United States or through a very rigorous educational system in Germany. They believe you should be trained in order to be effective in your career. And they're very good at it. And perhaps that's why they're rather effective in competitive terms. Perhaps that's why we have difficulty in Britain, because we do believe, still residually, that, you know, the gifted amateur is good enough. Well, you can see that in sport. That isn't necessarily true, and why should it be true in management?
That report was from Paul Burden, and that's all for this week's edition.